Hmm. Uh, huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Reuben Olson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we are here. I am Taylor Field.
And I'm Reuben Olson.
And we got a very spooky, good show in store for you. But before we get to that, we've got some plugs just to get out of the way. Be sure to check us out. CryptidClues.ca is our home base. You can find all of our information, episodes, and our blogs. And then be sure to check us out on our social media. Cryptid Clues on Facebook and Twitter, and on Patreon as well, where you can get the episodes ad-free, early, with some other cool little perks in there. And again, shout-outs to Kapruka, our single, I guess, our patron. You know, he's been supporting us since the get-go. And
The early investor.
Yeah, the early investor, yeah. And if you have any questions or, encounters or stories, just want to, say hi. Shoot us an email, cryptidclues@gmail.ca. So, Reuben, what are we talking about today?
Well, right now for us it's fall. The leaves are starting to turn, and when the leaves turn, they fall to the ground because hence it's fall. What do we do with the leaves? We grab a rake and we rake them up. So today we're going to be talking about the rake. Now that name might sound a little odd to you because it's actually not a real cryptid. The rake is just a term for an online creepypasta. So it's a very odd subject to talk about because the mythos surrounding this entity stems from that creepypasta. It's a made-up horror story that has no basis on reality. Or does it? After sightings of creepy crawling naked monsters, people started calling a lot of different cryptids the Rake. So why don't we start to sort that out? Let's look into creatures that kind of tend to fall into the category of creepy crawling naked things. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, we're going to be talking about a few different cryptids today. But going back to the term for the Rake, I mean, which really came first here? Was it really an online creepypasta or ghoulish crawlers scuttering about at night? It's kind of a chicken or the egg scenario because if you do try to go back to the beginning of this thing, the Rake is such a general horror story that's talking about this creature. It's kind of hard to find out where the sightings begin because there's so many other things out there. I definitely think of the online memes and video games that came out of the term. That's what birthed the existence of the Rake for me. But actual sightings and witness accounts of creatures matching the description exist. Could we have maybe created a new monster simply by believing in it really, really hard, like a tulpa? Or have we just slapped the name of an internet meme on a bunch of things that really shouldn't be called the Rake? If the Rake is by any chance real, more than likely we're looking at ghouls, pale crawlers, the Dover demon even. Some people even call the Fresno night crawlers the Rake. That's not even close to how it looks. So let's cover a few of these bases together here and see what we can find out. Now, Taylor, from your notes, what does this thing look like?
Well, just to kind of piggyback again on what you were saying, the Rake is just a kind of a general term that's just been labeled onto these different things. And I don't think a lot of people really understand the differences in these things, where you have some that are walking bipedally, some that are crawling, a little bit of both, some that are very different in the way they look with their facial features, and then some. So the general kind of description for these things is they're humanoid in appearance, they're hairless, incredibly skinny, crawling on all fours.
Like they're starving, right?
Like they're starving. And to kind of elaborate more on that, skinny shoulders, torso, extremely pale skin. I wouldn't say pale either as it being smooth, but you can see it's textured, I guess, like human skin, but really rough around the edges. So noise-wise, from what I had found, there are reports that it makes noises that resemble a frog, kind of like
Ew.
I know, kind of like an echoing, clicky sound. And then there's other reports where these things are making like a howl and a scream noise at the same time. So as far as it goes, like with the mouth set up, razor-like teeth, which to me makes sense if it's something living out in the wild, sharp teeth from killing, feeding. So that is basically all I could really find on the description of these things. And again, I know the Rake being that kind of like online meme creation, whatever it is. There's a lot of other kind of history attached to it that I was kind of avoiding. I was looking more or less into the humanoid wild creature entity thing that exists out there.
Exactly. Trying to look up just the Rake, I really shot myself in the foot for the first few hours trying to research because I just kept running into the video games and stuff that came out, all the YouTubers playing them, the original creepypasta, which I went and read, and it's okay. It's not that exciting.
That's where it pays to know the right terms, like Palewalkers, ghouls, and elaborating more on that, because then you start to find concrete
Exactly.
things.
Once I branched out and I started looking up other things, I actually did the majority of my research on ghouls and ghoul sightings. Those are things that I would look at and go, oh, okay, maybe this makes a bit more sense now. And actually, before we dive into all that, I think we brought it up in a past episode that I've had almost a sighting of maybe something similar to this when my dad and I were driving down the highway out here in the Okanagan. We're going past like a cliff edge down towards the lake, and I had seen the back end bare bum cheeks of some naked skinny thing clambering over the cement barrier, and both of us were like, what was that? And I can't recall at this point if it had human back legs or if it had like the bent backwards dog legs or anything like that. I just remember thinking like, okay, well, that's not a deer. I didn't get to see the front half, but it looked like a naked weird person with extremely long back appendages.
Could you recognize if there's hair or anything on there? Differentiate,
No,
I guess.
I didn't see hair.
Okay.
It was naked to me. I think I called it a skinwalker originally, just because I was getting the terms wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah, shout outs to our prologue episode. I think that was the very first one you get to know us.
So going from there, what do you have for like locations and stuff for this thing, or these things rather?
Well, I have two specific locations which I'll get into when we talk more about the sightings. But as far as it goes, sightings in general, these reports are coming in, our home province, British Columbia, Canada, all the way through the United States, continuing all the way to Mexico. Now, I didn't find a lot really associated with Europe. I was probably just looking in the wrong places, but a lot of what I was finding was just North America. And that freaks me out. A lot of them are actually in our country, in Canada.
Do you ever see those YouTube videos where people are in the sewers or something and you see some white eye shine peeking around the corner and all of a sudden it goes woof and it's gone?
Yeah.
That's what I think of now after doing all this research. It's creepy, it's dark. You're going to catch maybe a glimpse of it if you're lucky. Ugh. Or maybe way back in the European days, maybe they just referred to them as zombies, because what else would you call something like that?
A skinny human, 100%. If the European days, these settlers are coming across them and these things come along and bite them and trying to eat them, you're 100% going to think they're a zombie. I mean, it's something that obviously is not identified. If people look at it as an animal, I don't even know if I could call it an animal though, but we'll get to that, what we think it is later.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you want to lead from here, Taylor? Do you have anything about different cryptids that this thing is, or do you have some sightings about the Rake in particular?
Well, I'm curious what your prior knowledge of these things actually is.
The meme.
The
video
meme?
game.
Okay, yeah. Okay. For myself, my prior knowledge, I mean, I would probably say it's never really been associated with the meme until I started looking into recently and kind of discovering more of its origins. But I always remember when I was younger, there's Dogman, there's Bigfoot, there were all these few other cryptids, Loch Ness Monster, Ogopogo, and then there was always this one, the skinny humanoid crawling on all fours like entity. I remember being in high school and being fascinated with it, looking at pictures of deer cam, trail cams of just these.
What was it called back then?
I honestly feel like skinwalker would have been the term that my friends and myself would have used, but again, that's misidentifying, and I don't want to say, not misappropriating, incorrectly using a name that is referred to and given to something else. And again, I mean, no disrespect on that, the terminology. That's just what a young teenager referred to it as, because we didn't have the proper terminology to name it or to know where to look like we do now. So it was just something that was just a skinny entity, and I'm sure everyone's seen that picture of this deer cam, and you have the eye glare. You showed it to me before we started. It's just
Yeah.
such an iconic photo from, it's been around for decades now.
Yeah, if you Google the Rake or you Google Ghoul or anything like that on Google, because hence why you're Googling it, it's going to come up with that disgusting picture of like a naked demon-looking thing staring at the camera.
Yeah.
Now, interesting fact about that, and one other picture that's quite similar, is both photos were actually created as viral marketing material for J.J. Abrams and Steven Spielberg's Super 8. The photo was first uploaded on a hunting supply site's Facebook page, and it drifted its way to mainstream media. You have it making its way to a news channel where a hunter said he found it on his trail cam. I don't know if that was originally set up by J.J. Abrams as like a viral thing to outreach, but people were taking it and using it for attention a lot.
Yeah.
And now that picture is most popularly associated with the Rake.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, seeing these things, not personally, but for what they are from your research, what is your first impression of something like this?
Ghoul, that seems to line up the closest. When you've got pale crawlers, the Dover demon was even brought up. We've covered the Dover demon in a previous episode. I think it's definitely an alien entity on that one. I think people look at this and maybe like a quick drive-by viewing of something like this, you might think, oh, maybe it was a Dover demon, but there's only been like the one case of the Dover demon, so probably not.
And the descriptions don't really line up either.
No. But again, same thing with like the Fresno nightcrawler type things. If you haven't seen or heard of those, I think I'm actually getting the name wrong. Hopefully I can come across it here. Oh, I was right. Fresno nightcrawlers. They actually were investigated on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it's like a weird security camera that some people set up. I'll see if I can find some info about it. So one of the most well-known cases of the Fresno nightcrawlers was kind of back in the 1990s in Fresno, California, hence their name. There was a family who got concerned about trespassers on their property because their dogs were barking every night, and they decided, okay, well, maybe it's time to install a security camera, which they hung up outside by the garage facing the front lawn. The next morning, after they woke up, they were in shock when they viewed the video, and they saw not one, but two very pale, tall, I can't really say tall, but spindly beings, a few feet in height, hence why I can't say tall. They had no discernible arms, two long legs, kind of like stilts that moved its way up to a ball for a body, and they just casually walked down the road past a baby stroller. It looks like somebody took like a sheet, like you're trying to pretend to be a ghost, and you hiked the legs way up like an old man wearing pants. Now, a human couldn't fit in that. It is a very, very different shape. It looks like an upside down letter U with literally a basketball on the top. And it is walking so grossly, like actually almost whimsically. Kind of looks like something out of a Ghibli movie. That was the original footage of the Fresno nightcrawlers, and we have a few other clips of them now from around the same area. You have the exact same entities. You have one that's got, I think it's 3 of them, with a tiny little baby one walking in amongst them. And they've looked into this footage and tried to recreate it by faking it, and they can't do it. The Sci-Fi Channel had a show called Fact or Faked, where they eventually, after trying endlessly to recreate the video, deemed that it has to be genuine. You didn't have the CGI stuff back then to make it look so good.
Yeah.
That little family with a security camera didn't have the technology or the time to invest in making it look so good. So if you look up the Fresno nightcrawlers, first of all, definitely not a rake. I don't know why it gets brought up with the Rake, but it does if you go and Google sightings for the Rake and ghouls and stuff like that. I think that's like an alien entity thing or some weird... It's its own thing. Maybe we can talk about that in a future episode.
Yeah.
And then moving back into other things, you've got... I think you have notes on pale crawlers or something similar to that.
My two notable sightings that I took into my notes are focusing on the Palewalkers, yeah. And I'm going to have the blog compiling our notes. When this episode is out live, the blog will be on our website, and I'll have links as well to the website that has these sightings. So they're actually fairly recent as far as recent goes. But we're just gonna jump to a quick ad break. Sorry,
wow,
I know.
great
I
transition.
feel really, really evil doing that.
That was so sudden. We're always so good at just segueing into them, and all of a sudden, just ad break.
Yeah.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. That was the ad break again, interrupting us there. I believe Taylor was going to lead us off with a couple of sightings here.
I am, yeah. So basically, as I said before the ad break, they're fairly recent. This is 2018 that we're getting into, so within a 3-year time span. So basically, it's focusing on a man named Don Herbert. And essentially, he's a miner. He comes from a remote town of Hay River in the Northwest Territories, located on the southern shores of Great Slave Lake. So he works bi-weekly in rotation, spending 2 weeks at a time at the mine and then 2 weeks at a time off at home. So one night in the mid-August of 2018, during his annual summer vacation, about a week prior to his scheduled return to work, Herbert found himself alone in his truck, driving through the woods on the Northwest Territories, Highway 2, more commonly known as the Hay River Highway. This stretch of road is one of the most remote thoroughfares in all of Canada. Beginning on the shores of Great Slave Lake, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
What lake?
What's that?
What's the name of the lake?
Well, this is weird. In my notes, half of it, or one part of the section says Great Slave Lake, and the other part says Great Slake Lake.
Oh.
I'm going to have to go back and fact check because, again,
I think maybe Slake. Let's go with that.
Slake, yeah. I pulled this directly, quote unquote, from this sightings account. So I'm going to have to go back and just confirm essentially what that is. I did not even realize that. So, skirting to the western bank of the Hay River before joining the Mackenzie Highway, 38 kilometers to the south. In the months that followed this horrifying encounter, Don spent his free time, mind you, attempting to identify and track down the strange animal that he saw. So, Slave Lake. Okay, thank you for fact checking that.
Yeah, I just looked it up. There it is. It looks like it is Slave Lake.
So, this experience basically. Where did I leave off here? He spent his free time basically trying to track down this creature, as he was, I guess, basically trying to overcome it because he had a lot of fear that manifested from it. But as his account goes, he was driving down the highway, and as he was coming along, he saw this thing crawling up in the ditch.
Oh.
Now, this encounter is briefly, like, seconds. He saw it crawling up in the ditch, and it locked, like, eye contact with him where he was in his vehicle. Now, as he puts it,
up. I'm glad I got to see the butt of one of these things, not
the eyes. That's just it. I think the reflection, what is the official term for that?
Eye shine?
Eye shine. Thank you. Yes, the eye shine. I think that's what really is the chilling factor here. The eye shine you usually associate with raccoons, other small little critters at nighttime. I remember, sorry, this is detouring from the account, but I was pulling out of my driveway at night once, and there was a raccoon in the middle of the driveway on its hind legs, and I panicked because my first thought differed to one of these things, but it was the scariest thing. You don't expect to see something staring at you with the eye shine, but unfortunately for this man, it was seconds of an experience, and this is what really traumatized him. This thing locked on, the eye shine was there, then from the account, it jumped at his vehicle. He thought that it was going to hit him and hit his vehicle, All it did was, though, when it jumped, it corrected itself and started going alongside, like running alongside his vehicle. He floored it and left it behind. He got home.
I would have tried to run it over.
What if, I mean, you could. I mean, I'd be terrified of like slowing down, getting in an accident. What if you give it an opportunity to grab onto your vehicle? I wouldn't want to have anything to do with it. I would just want to sail away. But this thing, it made an attempt to keep pace with the vehicle. He got the hell out of there. He got home. He couldn't believe what he experienced. And he started going into research, reading different books, mysteries, stuff like that. And I really feel bad for the man, because when he would go outside, you know, even as doing like garbage and whatnot, it would be traumatizing for him, because you have this man he's going out and he's got a tree line of woods and he just doesn't feel comfortable. Like, it would slowly get worse and worse for him. So where he would go out and he would turn his back to the woods and the tree line and walk back, he would eventually the next day go out, he would start scanning the tree line. He would start to feel really, really scared of seeing this thing. He would walk backwards with his back to the house, get to the porch, then turn around and go inside.
I can only imagine, like, if you or I saw a Bigfoot or a dog man or something creepy like that, I wouldn't want to be leaving my back open to the woods anymore. I would be on my toes. I've done this before too, where like at nighttime, if I'm uncomfortable, like when I was a little kid, I hated my bedroom at night. I would walk backwards out into the lit hallway for some reason if I had to, like, go to the bathroom or whatever, because I wanted to make sure nothing was coming up on me. Or I would book it and I would just run. But of course, when you run and you have something scary behind you, it feels like something's chasing you, even if something's not.
100%. Absolutely. I think many kids can kind of relate to that. I know I can definitely relate to that. And it borderlines on, are you paranoid? Do you have goosebumps because it's a dream? It's a thought? Is it based on a memory of maybe like this man had an encounter? Or is it something where there's actually something actually there watching you? Is this man going out doing the garbage run and there is something in the tree line watching him?
Not like my childhood fear of the poop goblin. I would reach up and steal my poop, so I had to take a dump really fast.
I still, you may think he's joking, folks, but he's actually being serious.
I've brought this up to Taylor before in the past.
It blows my mind. But hey, these are things that kids, you're young, you get terrified of. And again, on the topic of this man, when you have one encounter and experience with something like this, I feel like it opens up a doorway to these things happening frequently. And again, I'm sure 110% it was just this man's fear that was getting to him. I don't think that it necessarily stalked him, but that is the one account that I have. And again, that was in August 2018. So yeah, do you have anything you want to throw in there? I have another sighting encounter, but I'll save that for after.
I've kind of got a sighting. So I was looking up videos and stuff of ghouls and rakes and whatnot, and I actually have one. And funny enough, the least believable place you could find a sighting, it was in the YouTube comments. This is from a Michael Thomas on a 55-second video titled "Weird Monster Captured on Film Stalking a Moose in Canadian Wilderness."
Oh, you brought this up. Okay, I was thinking I'm going to pull what we did back a few episodes ago where we're going to like pause. I'm going to play the video for you and jump right back in. I'm glad you saw this video.
I saw the video. It's from 2018.
Yeah.
This was actually like the second, or maybe it was the first comment that shows up under the popular comments of all time. Anyway, so I have kind of gone through and edited this just for typos and stuff like that. I'm going to quote it as close as possible. There's some slightly offensive stuff in here, maybe to some folk, but we'll just go with it. So it starts with Michael saying, "I saw the same thing back in the winter of 1984, and this is him referring to the video, in Wimauma, FL, at a Masonic Youth Park." I guess that's Florida, FL?
That would be.
And then he supplies the address for this place.
Well, we won't state the address.
Exactly.
Yeah.
"You can see it now on Google Earth. It happened when Mimoma was very underdeveloped. I was invited to a friend's ceremony for the weekend, and I was 15 years old. On that Friday night, we were out in the woods there, on narrow dirt trails, in a vast wooded area. We were playing hide and seek, but it was a little of a more grown-up version because we tackled each other when found. But anyways, it was about midnight, and it was a full moon, and I was hiding off the trail behind a pine tree. I had one of the guys call out and say, "Okay, we're done, everyone head back to camp." So I stepped out onto the trail and started walking back. With woods to my left and right, and the full moon shining through the woods on my left, I was by myself and heard something hit some palmetto bush leaves and thump on the ground. I stopped, waited, and watched in the direction towards my left, and the moon was peering through the trees and lighting it up a little bit. Then a few moments passed and I saw it. It jumped over a 4-foot bush towards my direction, with its feet just grazing the top, and landing with a thump again, behind another bush that was closer and blocking my view of it. I didn't move, but my mind was telling me to run like hell. Then it jumped again towards my direction, landing behind a tree, and I saw it more clearly. It was about man height, maybe taller. I didn't see any clothing, so it was naked and very pale, with spindly arms and legs and a bald, pale head. I didn't see eyes or a nose or a mouth. If anything, those kinds of features were blurred. Finally, my mind told my legs to run, and they did. I ran back about 50 yards up the path and ran into the other guys. They were all there, and everyone all counted and present. I asked them if anyone else is out here with us. I was told no. I am 52 years old now, and in my time I have seen odd things once in a while. UFOs, ghosts, etc., but nothing that stood out like that, and that is still at the forefront of my memory. There's a reply after this with an interesting comment as well that says, just casually, "Oh, the natural enemy of these rake-like beings is the dogman." But anyways, so
Interesting.
I pulled that out of the comments just because the story kind of stuck with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it was rather interesting, so I figured we'd include it here. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I am like chilling.
Interesting
Like,
to note that it
yeah.
jumped at him, just like in the encounter you mentioned.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it wasn't bipedal then in this account. It was on all fours as it was jumping.
It seems to be. That's how I picture it.
Yeah, which would make sense if it was to get a good jump. Kind of like how a cat, I would imagine, or any kind of wild animal would jump. It kind of like braces itself with its front forearms and like launches itself, pounces out. Very, very interesting. And definitely sounds more of like a pale walker for sure. It's funny because I believe as far as jumping goes, the leaping factor for this thing is another focal point of this next encounter that I have. Again, this is in August 2018 in Quesnel, in British Columbia. So the first alleged encounter took place early in the summer. So when this person had noticed an eerie humanoid creature running inhumanly fast through the field behind his house before vaulting over a 5.5 foot tall fence and disappearing into the woods. This creature was I can't say this word ever right. Emaciated.
Emaciated. I was about to say immaculate.
Immaculate. It was an immaculate vault over the fence. It was white-skinned, at least 7 feet tall, with a gaping mouth, and no eyes. Now, the no eyes thing, I think, is very interesting.
Hey, that relates to this one.
Exactly. Unlike the crawler that was featured in the Don Herbert encounter, this creature was bipedal and ran with a man-like gait. So again, in August 2018, the person that experienced this published another posting of this encounter in which they claim to have seen this creature one more time, this time at night, darting through a field on his property and jumping the fence into his neighbor's yard. 2 weeks later, this person caught the same creature peering at him from around the side of his house.
Ew.
Frightened, he retreated indoors, and later he examined the area at which the creature had stood, and he found scratch marks on the exterior of his house. It only keeps escalating from here. So, in October 2018, this man reported a third encounter. So, before I get to that third encounter, though, I'm just going to segue to a quick ad break.
Wow, so sudden. This one's even sooner than the last one. What are you doing?
And we're back. So this third encounter that he experiences,
Carry on. Sorry, I'm still chuckling at the ad break.
I know we're not good at those. They just come out of nowhere.
Unless you listen to these on our Patreon, in which case we say, hey, there's an ad break, and then all of a sudden, there's no ad.
You just get 10 seconds of us just breathing.
Heavy breathing.
As we wait. So yeah, the third encounter that unfolded, while he was sitting outside on the back porch facing his field, the creature appeared and raced across his property as it had done several times before. This time, however, it stopped in the middle of his field and turned and stared at him.
Ew.
Before this man, again, he was petrified from this. Before he had time to react, the creature ran down the field and leapt into his neighbor's yard again. I'd be terrified, like, if this was the neighbor, just...
It was the neighbor himself.
Yeah, like, who knows, but...
Oh, that's just Bob.
Yeah.
He does
So-
this every night. It's how he exercises.
On another occasion, this man saw the creature peering at him through his living room window, which I hate in encounters when these entities are peering through the windows. That is one reason why my blinds are usually always closed.
And that's disturbing to me. And I feel like it'd be
100%.
much, much more natural to see something like a Bigfoot versus like a ghoulish rake-like creature.
Exactly. I think when you cross that line where this thing starts to express interest in you and is aware of you, that's where you start to feel, I don't want to say not at the top of the food chain. I think humans are definitely not there, in my opinion, but you start to feel like you are prey. Where we don't experience that in everyday life. We really don't. And it changes once this thing is stalking you. So when this happened, he ran upstairs to retrieve his hunting bow, which, as he puts it, he was going to use to protect himself. By the time he got downstairs, it was gone. So the final posting of this encounter that this man published it accounts to November 2018. So about 2 weeks after the previous encounter, this time, the man found the creature staring into his barn through an open window.
Oh.
The entity apparently learned that it was being watched, turned to face the man, emitted a piercing shriek before running back into his neighbor's yard, but further on into the woods. So for whatever reason, it was just standing upright, bipedally, staring into this man's barn. Just, that freaks the living daylights out of me. I just feel like the ominous, like, what is it thinking is what really makes me afraid. But how do you feel? What do you think of this?
I'm still thinking of the previous encounter. If I was inside the house and I went upstairs to grab my bow, I would probably barricade myself in the room that the bow was in. I would not venture down the stairs in the fear that this thing broke into the house.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want to be heading downstairs ready to go shoot it outside, and then it just tackles me from the other end of the hall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or just looking into the barn, that's disturbing. Did he have any animals in there? Was it just an empty barn?
He didn't specify. I imagine there probably would have been. I mean, I don't know.
It's just like an empty abandoned barn that almost makes it creepier, doesn't it?
It does.
Like you're just watching this thing staring at nothing.
Yeah. I imagine, like, for the most part, I'm not a farmer, but barns are, you have horses. Chickens usually have little chicken coops. Pigs, I imagine, similar, but don't necessarily go into barns. Barns primarily horses. You got hay, everything in there. Maybe a couple cattle, but
Or storage. A lot of
or
barns are for
storage.
storage.
Yeah, 100%. So it could have been animal noises that were drawing it in, but whatever the reason, there was something on this man's property that was luring it, or at least drawing it in there. But once it, I guess, started to really know that it was being identified and watched and observed, this was the man's last reported account. That's when the thing started to back off. Only after the fact of it inquiring, going up to the man's house, which again is after it being in the field and making direct eye contact with this man on the porch, it got curious.
I hate that. I'd be moving. Like, that'd be it for me. I'm like,
Absolutely.
okay, time for the city life.
Yeah, 100%. So, do you have any other sightings or anything else you want to
Yeah, I've
cover on
got
that?
a few. I'm just going to read them off this one article
Go
I saved
for
that
it.
just compiles a whole bunch here. So in Indiana, we have another odd report as well. So this one is from the winter of 2016. The witness was out feeding goats on a farm in Davies County, Indiana, at around 8 p.m. When she finished, she started walking back, I guess, towards her house, and this is what she had to say of what happened. After I had finished, I began to walk back. I had crossed one field and was about halfway through the narrow path when I started to hear rustling in the underbrush. All I had with me was a little flashlight that shone about 10 feet in front of me. I was almost at the end of the path when I spotted something. It was on all fours, with a bony frame, elongated limbs, and pale skin. Now, while the first part of that description sounds pretty generic, it seemed to have a long and highly flexible neck. Not long after I noticed it, it noticed me and bolted down the path. It ran, scuttling into the second field. This field had a small hill in the center. It fled and disappeared over the one side of it. I ran as fast as I could around the other side of the small hill and zigzagged back to my house, where I quickly locked all of my doors. This thing was terrifying, but it seemed watchful more than anything for now.
That freaks me out. An elongated neck.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. A lot of the research that I found, in my notes at least, it doesn't have anything about a long neck. I did find stuff about the mouth being down on the neck and being
Ew,
our
that's
mouths
kinda
being
like horror movie
horizontal.
tier.
I know their mouths were vertical on their necks. Very horror movie like, but I didn't find anything about an elongated neck. That's very fascinating. I can imagine the limbs are equal to that.
There's a couple of other sightings here. This one seems pretty interesting, and it looks like this one is dated around 2010 and concerns a witness known as Jade. The witness was out one night, headed for a haunted cemetery called Casbar out in the deep woods of Effingham along with two friends. When they were out in the countryside at around 1 a.m. in the morning, this happened, and again, this goes right to the witness quotes here. I see something with yellow glowing eyes off the side of the country road just past the ditch in the headlights. Too short to be a deer, but too big to be a possum or a raccoon. As we get closer, it gets clearer, and I realize what I'm looking at is skinny, hairless, and gray, human-like, but definitely not human. Crazy as hell looking. It was crouched down. Its arms were incredibly long and looked like it could have been 7 foot taller or bigger if it stood. I can feel myself getting cold, and my heart races, my hair stands up on the back of my neck. Complete shock and terror set in, and I couldn't make a sound. I'm just staring at it. By that time, we are right in front of it, passing it. It just watches us drive by, and it slinks into the dark. We all started screaming, literally freaking the hell out. I was convinced it was a demon for months, but still doubted myself for even seeing it, thinking my mind was playing tricks on me. We didn't make it to the Casbar Cemetery that night. We went straight home. I couldn't sleep. Then I guess the witness goes on to become convinced that what she had seen was a ghoul, or an entity that lurks around feeding on the dead. She would say of this, "They feed on the freshly dead, and normally stay close to cemeteries to be close to food. They have been known to show themselves to humans when trying to get close to them to eat them in times where fresh deceased bodies are scarce. I went to images of them and can only find illustrations, but they all look exactly like what I saw that night." So, going from that encounter, which is terribly creepy, let's talk a little bit about ghouls, because I think, if anything, when it comes to a rake-like being, beyond how in-depth the creepypasta goes for what the rake itself does to the person in the story, appearance-wise, what people associate with the rake-wise, ghouls are it. Now, a ghoul is an Arabic folklore creature associated with graveyards and consuming human flesh. The oldest surviving literature that mentions ghouls is Arabian Nights. The term was first used in English literature in 1786 in William Beckford's Orientalist novel Vathek, which describes the ghoul of Arabian folklore. Originally, in pre-Islamic times, the males were called Kutrub and females called Gula. In Sumerian and Akkadian, That's Babylonian and Assyrian mythology. The Gallus, also called Gallas, were great demons and devils that roamed the streets, hiding in dark corners or deserted places. It is rumored that ghouls can take on the appearance of what they consume.
That's now I know I probably wasn't really originally going to bring up this video, but you had sent a video my way, and I think it goes hand in hand with what you just described for ghouls. You probably remember this vehicle pulling up the side of the road, seeing what looked like a normal human in the ditch, and I couldn't understand what they were saying, but they obviously realized something was wrong. They started to pull forward as this thing went down on all fours, and it looked total ghoul pale walker. It didn't look anything like the human that it resembled at first, but it was calling them, which is the freaky part.
Yeah. Or there's another video too out there where it's like a vehicle, I think it's in a vehicle, driving up towards a cemetery, and you see something. I think this is actually a Bigfoot video because it's really hard to make out what it is in the cemetery, but you see what looks like a dark, hard to make out being using its hands to dig open a grave, and it's crouched down like Gollum, just scurrying and digging in the grave, and then it starts to look towards the camera and they take off.
The people with the camera or the creature takes off?
The people with the camera.
They take off, okay.
They take off. So the people with the camera recording it, it's digging and all that stuff, and as soon as it notices them, they start running. So that's the end of the video.
Was this the one where they found the feathers on the ground?
I don't know.
Because there is another one very similar. It's night vision camera style, and they're speaking not in English. They're
Okay, this is not in that video.
different one. Okay, I know you sent me this video additionally as well. I wasn't sure if this was the same one you're talking about. They find a feather on the ground. They keep progressing forward, and then they see it. This thing, it looks like Smeagol from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It turns, you see the eye shine, and as soon as it turns back, they immediately start running the other way. Again, are these videos concrete evidence? 100% no, but it's up to you. It's up to us to interpret it for what we think it is and just form our own perspective based on the information at hand. So that'll be another video that I'll definitely have on the blog. All these notes and everything is going to be added to the blog, links to these videos as well. But that's really a very eerie account that you detailed there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going back to more YouTube videos and stuff, and I believe I've shared this with you before, Taylor, but we'll describe it a little bit for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
There's a video out there of this guy, and he's going in and out of almost what looks like abandoned cement buildings just out in the desert. So it's just empty, open spaces, and a whole bunch of these really old style, I want to call them huts, but they're just square cement blocks for houses. And they've got cut out square windows, they've got cut out doors, and it's pitch black. It is nighttime. He is mostly filming in like a black and white night vision mode. And I don't think it was in English. It was like Russian or something like that. But anyways, he's going through, and with the camera, he's very creeped out, and he sees white eye shine that looks like a person coming up above the window, and it ducks down.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets very freaked out, but he chases after it, and it scurries around to the next building.
Oh my God.
He goes in between each building. Every single time when there's silence or something like that, you see the eye shine again, just slowly peek like around the corner of the window, and right back, just instant as soon as it realizes it's on camera.
Yeah.
Now, that could be very, very easy to fake. I mean, you could have somebody dressed up with a couple of reflective things for eyeballs, bad quality video, but that kind of atmosphere, ooh, that's terrifying. I hate the thought of ghouls being like that. Or if we go back and look at trail cam footage or of other cryptids and stuff where you only see the eye shine, what if those are ghouls? What if people are going out looking for other things and they're just catching quick glimpses of ghouls and eye shine from these things?
So they see a Bigfoot, but this ghoul is just taken on and manifested itself into what that is.
That if we go with the whole taking on other appearances shtick. Or if you just see the eye shine.
So
what if that's all you have to go on?
So just misinterpretation.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Which I'm sure misinterpretation for a lot of animals is a big chunk of cryptid sightings.
Yeah.
I was driving down the road the other day, going back home with my wife and kid in the car, and we saw a bear.
Thank you for that snapshot. I really enjoyed watching that.
You're welcome. I quickly stopped with my headlights on and whipped out my phone because it's a dead road. No one comes up to our road. And I started recording the bear. And greatest thing, it climbs the tree. It's really cute. But that first initial shock of eye shine, looking up in the headlights, you don't know what it is. You don't know if it's going to stand up or what. That's scary.
Absolutely.
Speaking of scary things, let's do our last ad break. And welcome back.
That was terrifying, but smooth as heck. So, what else do you have in your notes? I feel like we're coming to the end here.
Those are the end of my notes.
In your notes? Okay.
Yeah, I looked up ghouls. We never really dove into like pale walkers as a term, but I feel like that really just encompasses all of these sightings and ghouls and stuff like that. It's not the Dover demon. It's definitely not quote unquote the Rake, because that's not a real thing. It's something's out there. I assume it's most likely demonic. I cannot picture it being a natural entity. It's horrifying and I hate it so much. What do you think of the whole Rake aspect of all this stuff we've talked about?
Well, yeah, that's the fascinating thing. I'm not inclined to go along the demonic side necessarily. I feel like, and this will segue into another part of my notes, that you have humanoids, some like us that got to this point in society, and there's other ones that, whether they're related to us some shape or form, or it's just another humanoid-like entity, you know, there's stories of elves and gnomes and dwarves and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, modern media and everything like that. I feel like this could be an equivalent to that in a real life scenario where it's a humanoid that lives underground. And
the underground thing. There's all that footage from sewers and stuff like that of these things peeking around corners. That could easily be that. At the same time, if them consuming human flesh is a thing, if that's solely their dietary purpose, that's why they're digging up grave sites and occasionally attacking people, you think there'd be a lot more of them that you'd see around.
True. I definitely wouldn't deny that. It makes me wonder about the level of intelligence. Because a Bigfoot would eat like a boar, a deer, a buck, that sort of stuff, probably even a man, but they choose not to all the time.
In ghoul lore, if we're going based off, this is just what the internet says, I haven't dove into the research part of this too much. Apparently, ghouls being able to take on the forms and shapes of other things would disguise themselves as people, because kind of like a vampire in a sense. If you've just drank a bunch of blood as a vampire, like in movies and media, they can blend in with humans. Ghouls would do the same thing, and they would talk to and communicate and pretend to be human and try to eat people kind of on the side and keep themselves full. You wouldn't find out they're a ghoul until they started to starve themselves, and then they would slowly become more and more monstrous. And there's actually a few supposed reports of ghouls being captured and starved, and a big question on ethics and stuff, like, are we uncovering a ghoul or are we just starving a human being and they're going insane?
Yeah.
Going back through other historic lore as well with ghouls, and I'm not really going to quote any of this because I'm just going off my memory here from my research. You could have people intermarrying with a ghoul or something like that, and they'd have a relationship, and it was all dependent on which one was the male and the female and what the baby would be when it came out, if it was more ghoul than human. There's weird lore like that out there for these things.
That's crazy.
It's so messed up, but they would have to blend in pretty well with society to get by like that.
Yeah. I mean, we live in a world full of people going missing every day, every second, every minute. And how many serial killers and maniacs are out there? I mean,
The Missing 411.
Missing 411, that's a great example. It's terrifying. There's so many documentaries and shows and things that are just showing, you know, psychotic killers pulling off murder and succeeding, getting away with it, never being found by the cops. I know there's just stories, they're just set up for entertainment and a show, but they do it in a way that successfully works where, you know, if a ghoul manifests itself as a person, can speak, hold conversation without this individual even knowing, it makes total sense that this person could be lured. Look at so many other forms of history where you have sailors out and sirens or mermaids are like luring them away, right? And they trick them. Like, humans are very susceptible to trickery. I mean, that is 100% evident in our history as a race and a
Just
species.
want to shout out to my wife and kid. If I'm not home tonight, Taylor probably ate me. Please report him.
Don't come crawling over here. But moving on from that, though, location-wise, now, as we're talking about like sewers and stuff where some of these sightings occur, I was looking into cave systems. Now, a lot of reports of these things come out of Canada, and that terrifies me because we're in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Vancouver Island alone, on the west coast, has over 1,000 cave systems. I did not know that. That blew my mind. There are approximately 17,000 caves alone in the United States. You can imagine these caves go on for miles, how many of them are connected to each other. It is just mind-boggling. So you can imagine if there is actually an ecosystem down there that would be disturbed from, splunking, miners, who knows? Which gets into my next topic, fracking. Now, if you don't know what fracking is the process of drilling down into the earth before a high-pressure water mixture is directed at the rock to release the gas inside. The term fracking refers to how the rock is fractured apart by the high pressure. Now, it's almost as if you are sending out signals in the ocean. We've seen what happens with dolphins and whales, how they beach themselves because, man-made signals and instruments are operating in the oceans and it's causing a ruckus. If you're sending out massive signals and massive pressure that's being released to break rocks apart underground, thousands of feet below the surface, if there are nearby cave systems or networks, things that live down there will get driven upward. And if you're dealing with skinny, pale humanoids that haven't seen the light of day, that come out at nighttime, some reported don't even have faces, at least eyes, then these are things that, to me, have evolved underground that have no reason to see, but base their senses off of, hearing and such. You could kind of... Echolocation. And if you want a good example of that, you can look into the movie The Descent and The Descent 2. That's what you pulled up in your notes there, 100%. And again, I know it's just a horror movie, but I feel like that's a great kind of take on what a alternative humanoid equivalent Palewalker-like thing living underground could kind of resemble. If you want an image of it, that's something you could look into. So
I love that we both thought of The Descent.
Yeah.
I was not actually part of my notes. I just remembered it. I was like, I watched this movie and it had naked people in it underground. I want to clarify the underground part there, not just naked people. But anyways,
yeah.
I pulled that up and I was like, I should tell Taylor to watch this. And then he just naturally brought it up.
Yeah. It's a really good movie. It's really, really good.
Isn't there a sequel?
There's a sequel. Yeah, The Descent 2. Yeah. So they're good films. Go check them out. It's Halloween, That's why we wanted to do this episode was, Halloween's right around the corner. And we wanted to talk about some sightings and just kind of make it like a campfire feel and get the spooks going on.
Oh, yeah. All of our little stories there with people's encounters.
Yeah.
That is very campfire-esque. You should throw in some crackling sound effects.
There probably is at this point some fire sound effects. Feels like we're roasting some marshmallows.
I feel like with any cryptid we talk about on the show, though, you could totally spin it for a Halloween episode, so that just feels really...
100%. All these things are just, they're
easy.
Scary. Yeah, it is easy. They're all terrifying things, and they're all unknown. And I'm glad we got to talk about this. I mean, after the last episode that we did, the Goat Man, that was... it was fascinating to kind of cover the different types. It was very cool just to talk sightings with you and the encounters and what we just kind of think this thing is, because... Like I said earlier, if you try to look online, it's a whole bunch of names and terms that don't really align properly, and it all just resorts back to the Rake, which is when I reached out to you and I thought, I've spent over an hour in this, and I'm not finding or making any headway in this because it just seems like it's connected to a meme, but yet there are reports of this humanoid skinny creature. And then you dropped some other terms for it, and that helped my search out greatly when I was looking into research. So
yeah, once I started taking my notes down, I was like, okay, let's get past the meme here because I wasted so much time on that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it.
I think that is. All right, ladies and gentlemen and people folk, that's it for this episode of Cryptid Clues. Taylor, do you want to take us out?
Yeah, again, be sure if you have any experiences, you just want to talk, reach out to us at CryptidClues@gmail.ca. And again, check us out on social media, Patreon, and yeah.
Bye-bye.